The dojo erupted with laughter when a group of cocky black belts pointed at an old man sitting quietly in the corner. His hair was gray, his posture stiff, and he wore no belt, no GI, just a worn jacket and boots that had seen better days. "Hey, old-timer," one of them sneered, "care to show us a move or two?" They thought it was a harmless joke, a way to humiliate someone too fragile to resist. But what happened when the veteran stood up, slowly, deliberately, would leave every single person in that room frozen in shock. The dojo was alive with energy. Dozens of young fighters trained hard, their black belts a badge of honor they wore proudly. Among them, arrogance floated just as heavily as sweat. They eyed the old man in the corner, whispering to each other, mocking his silence. The old man's name was Richard Kane, a veteran whose years of service were etched into the lines on his face. His eyes, though calm, carried the weight of someone who had seen far more than sparring mats and trophies. But to the black belts, he looked like nothing more than a washed-up senior clinging to memories. "Come on, Grandpa," one of them taunted, stepping forward with a smirk. "Show us what you've got. Unless those bones of yours are too brittle." The room chuckled, but Richard didn't respond immediately. Instead, he placed his cane aside and slowly rose. The dojo grew quieter, curiosity overtaking amusement. With every step he took toward the mat, the energy shifted. The cocky black belt who had taunted him suddenly felt the weight of eyes turning serious. "Are you sure you want this?" Richard asked, his voice calm but steady. The black belt laughed, mistaking the question for weakness. "Don't worry, I'll go easy on you." The veteran simply nodded, and in that single nod, something about the room changed. The younger students, once eager to see an easy victory, felt a strange tension tighten in their chests. They couldn't explain why, but the presence of the old man seemed different, almost commanding. The match was about to begin, and no one in the dojo realized they were moments away from witnessing a lesson they would never forget. The black belt bowed with a cocky grin, bouncing lightly on his toes. Richard bowed as well, but his movements were precise, almost military-like. The contrast was striking, youthful arrogance versus seasoned discipline. The instructor overseeing the class gave the nod. "Begin." The younger fighter lunged forward, confident he would end this quickly. He swung a fast jab toward Richard's chest, aiming to startle him. But before anyone could blink, the old veteran pivoted. His body moved with a fluid efficiency that came not from dojo drills but from years of real combat. In an instant, the black belt's strike was redirected, and he was on the ground, staring at the ceiling, gasping for air. The room went silent. Richard hadn't even broken a sweat. His stance was relaxed, his breathing controlled. He looked down at the young man and simply said, "Control is everything." Embarrassed, the black belt jumped up, insisting it was a fluke. "Lucky move, old man. Try that again." The second attempt came faster, fiercer, kicks, punches, a flurry of strikes meant to prove his superiority. Yet each one was met with an almost effortless block, redirection, or sidestep. Richard's defense was poetry in motion, and when he finally countered, it was with a single controlled sweep that sent the young man tumbling across the mat. The other students' laughter was gone now. Their faces were painted with disbelief. Some even leaned forward, unable to comprehend how someone who looked so frail could move with such precision. Richard helped the young man up. Fighting isn't about strength or speed. It's about discipline, patience, and understanding your opponent. But the black belts weren't done. The humiliation stung too deeply. Another one stepped forward, tightening his belt with determination. "Let me try." The stage was set for something even more intense. This time, the black belt was bigger, stronger, and far more aggressive. His reputation in the dojo was one of dominance. He cracked his knuckles as he faced Richard, muttering, "You won't make a fool out of me, old man." The instructor hesitated but allowed the match to proceed. Everyone wanted to know if Richard's earlier victory had been luck or something more. The younger fighter didn't waste time. He launched forward with a powerful roundhouse kick. Richard didn't block, it seemed almost reckless. Instead, he stepped in, closing the distance before the kick had reached its arc. In a blink, the veteran had trapped the fighter's leg, twisted, and gently but firmly set him on the mat. The move was so seamless it looked unreal. Gasps filled the dojo. The black belt growled, scrambling back up, throwing a barrage of punches. Richard's movements were subtle, economical. He sidestepped, redirected, parried. It was as if every attack had already been anticipated. The more the younger fighter pressed, the calmer Richard became. Finally, Richard placed his hand on the fighter's shoulder, guiding him downward. "Breathe," he instructed, and just like that, the bigger man was pinned, unable to move, not from brute force but from perfect technique. The dojo was stunned. 2 black belts defeated, easily. Richard stepped back, straightened his jacket, and gave a small bow. "Skill isn't measured by your belt," he said quietly. "It's measured by the respect you carry for the art." The arrogance in the room was evaporating, replaced by awe. But one final black belt, the most skilled of them all, clenched his fists. He wasn't about to let the reputation of his dojo crumble without a fight. This fighter was different. He was the dojo's pride, a competitor with national trophies under his belt. The room buzzed with anticipation. If anyone could defeat Richard, it would be him. "Old man," he said firmly, "you've embarrassed my brothers. But this ends now." Richard didn't flinch. "Very well, show me what you've learned." The match began with a burst of speed. The master black belt's strikes were faster, sharper, and far more strategic. He combined high kicks with sweeps, aiming to overwhelm Richard. For the first time, the veteran actually had to shift his footing more quickly. The audience leaned in, convinced they might see him falter. But Richard's face remained calm. He wasn't panicked, he was studying. Every strike revealed something, every movement painted a picture. And when the perfect moment came, he acted. With one swift motion, he caught his opponent mid-kick, pivoted, and locked him into an arm control that brought the fighter to his knees. The dojo gasped louder than ever before. The master black belt struggled but couldn't escape. Richard leaned close and whispered, "Power is meaningless without wisdom." Then, as gently as he had begun, he released the hold. The master bowed deeply, his pride shattered but his respect newfound. "You've taught us more in minutes than years of training," he admitted. Now, the dojo no longer saw a fragile old man. They saw a warrior, a teacher, a man whose discipline had been forged in battles far more real than sparring mats. But there was still one question lingering in everyone's mind: who was Richard Kane, really? The dojo gathered around Richard, the tension giving way to curiosity. Someone finally asked, "Who are you?" Richard sighed, his eyes distant. "I served in places you wouldn't want to imagine. Years ago, I trained not for tournaments, but for survival. Every move I know was meant to protect lives, not win trophies." The students hung on his every word. "I fought alongside brothers who never made it home. Discipline was the only thing keeping us alive. Out there, hesitation meant death. That's why when you mocked me, I didn't see students, I saw boys who hadn't yet understood what this art is truly about." Silence filled the room. The master black belt stepped forward, bowing low. "We misjudged you, sir. Please, teach us." Richard looked at the eager faces surrounding him. For years, he had kept his skills buried, carrying memories too heavy to share. But now, seeing the humility in their eyes, he felt a shift. Perhaps this dojo could become more than a training hall, it could become a sanctuary of respect. He nodded slowly. "Then learn not just how to fight, but why you fight." The students bowed in unison. The lesson was clear: strength was hollow without honor. Weeks later, the dojo was transformed. The laughter and arrogance had been replaced with focus and humility. The students trained harder than ever, but now with purpose. Every strike carried respect. Every spar carried discipline. At the center of it all stood Richard Kane, no longer just a quiet old man in the corner. He had become their mentor, their guide. He shared not just techniques, but stories, lessons from the battlefield that turned into lessons for life. The same black belts who had once mocked him now bowed deeply each time they saw him. They understood now that martial arts wasn't about dominance, but about honor, patience, and control. One evening, as the dojo lights dimmed, the master black belt approached Richard. "You've changed us," he admitted. "Not just as fighters, but as men." Richard smiled faintly. "Then my service continues, in a different way." And with that, the veteran who had once been ridiculed became the heart of the dojo, a living reminder that true mastery isn't found in belts or titles, but in the spirit of humility and wisdom. The joke had turned into a legacy. And every student knew they had witnessed something extraordinary.